Do you remember the first time you ever played Pokemon X? It doesn't feel like that long ago, but somehow this game is almost 12 years old. I still remember surfing through those early routes with my starter, just trying to catch whatever popped up. And funny enough, most of those Pokemon I encountered weren't even from Kalos. In fact, your first encounter? A guaranteed Pidgey. Then it's nothing but Gen 1 to Gen 5 Pokemon swarming the grass. The Kalos Pokemon are outnumbered 5 to 1. And it made me wonder why. Why does X and Y's signature feature, Mega Evolution, only apply to one Kalos Pokemon that's not even attainable? It's because the game doesn't want you to just use the new gen monsters. It wants you to play Pokemon, all of it, every generation. So that's what I'll be doing. In this video, I'll be taking on Pokemon X exactly how Game Freak intended, with a team made up of one Pokemon from every generation, aka the Diversity Hire Squad. Here are the rules. I can only catch one Pokemon from each region, I can't use the EXP share, and will try my absolute best not to overlevel. Let's get started. Starting our journey, I get woken up bright and early by Assault and make my way downstairs to my divorced mom. She explains to me that I must leave the nest so she can have more home alone time, for whatever reason. So we head off and start our Pokemon journey. Oh, and look, this game gave us a full friend group, which means even more rival battles. Great! I end up selecting Fennekin as my starter because it was always my go-to pick as a child, despite the Delphox hate. But none of that matters because I won't be using any starters for this run. So I make my way over to Route 2, where I'd catch my actual starter, Fletchling. I will be choosing Fletchling as my 6th generation Pokemon, and going back to the rules, he's now the only Kalos Pokemon I'm allowed to catch and battle with. Why I ultimately chose Fletchling is for nostalgic purposes. Yes, as a child, I kept both Talonflame and Delphox on the same team, because clearly I didn't give a f about type coverage. I also feel like Talonflame is kind of the staple 6th gen Pokemon. Aside from the starters, it's a pretty popular one, so I'm going for it. I named him Tweety, which I feel is pretty accurate to how he looks, and I started his training arc. After slaughtering quite a few wild Pokemon, I reached high enough level to survive in Santaloon Forest. And just to be extra safe, Sad Girl Shauna tags along with us as well. I crush a few more trainers' dreams, then make it out the forest and arrive in Santaloon City. And Fletchling was looking a whole lot stronger, so I decided to take on my first gym challenge. The trainers in this gym were pretty easy to defeat, largely thanks to Fletchling's flying type advantage against their bug Pokemon. All I had to do was spam Peck and all was good. Now I did end up going a little over level, but not enough to where I feel like I cheated. Yet. I then take on my first gym leader, Viola. She starts the battle with Surskit, and of course I send out Fletchling. With just one peck, I'm able to take her below half health while she uses Water Sport. On the next turn, she quick attacks but does little damage, and I finish her off with another peck. Her second Pokemon is Vivian, who's a little harder to beat. She uses Harden, which weakens my peck attack, but I stick with it. And by the third turn, she uses Infestation, which chips away at my health. By the time I get her to red health, she uses the potion to heal, which is super frustrating. So I use Peck once again, and on the next turn decide to heal as well. And from there, I spam Peck until she's defeated. This fight was a little harder than I expected, especially with Fletchling, but I claimed my first gym badge regardless, the Bug Badge. As I made my way out of town, I was gifted the EXP share by Viola's sister, but as per challenge rules, I must keep it off for the entire run, no exceptions. From there, I ventured through Route 4, which held my second Pokemon of the run. Now, it was a decently rare encounter rate, so it took me quite a bit of time to find one. But eventually, I ran into Ralts. Now, Ralts is technically locked in as my 3rd gen Pokemon of the run from Hoenn, but I still had the opportunity to evolve into Gallade, which is a 4th gen Pokemon. Don't worry, all will be revealed later, but catching him comes first. I then decided to name him Pretty Boy, self-explanatory, and made my way into the Grand Lumio City. Stationed in the south side of the city, I meet up with my friends and the professor in his lab, where I battle his team of Kanto starters. He starts the battle with his Bulbasaur versus my Ralts. I managed to take him down to low health with Confusion, but ultimately failed to get the KO. And from there, Fletchling takes over, knocking out the Bulbasaur. His Squirtle would meet a similar fate, although getting me near half health. I spam Pecks and quick attacks until he's defeated. And lastly, Charmander's terrible defense gets him KO'd in 3 turns by a quick attack, giving us the win. After the battle, he was gracious enough to give me one of his Pokemon, so I chose Squirtle, but again it didn't matter as he was going straight to the PC. But before I got the chance to bench him, we encountered Lysander for the first time, who clearly had to be the villain of this game. I mean, if not the 6'5" giant in all black with red spiky hair, then who? Making my way to the next town on Route 5, my beloved little Fletchling evolved into Fletchinder, and grew from cute and harmless to slightly less cute and harmless. I then ran into Tierno, who was filling in for Serena on rival duty, so you know we had to battle, and all he had on his team was a Corphish who killed my Ralts, but was eventually avenged by Fletchender burning him to death. After the quick ass whooping, I found my way to Camphor Town, which was pretty bland. No gym, no shopping, just one big roadblock. So I continue west, and I was wrong. This is definitely the big roadblock. So I'm sent on a journey up north to Parfume Palace, taking Route 6, where I'm conveniently surprise attacked by my third member of the team, Venipede. Venipede has always been one of my favorite Pokemon from the Unova region, and overall has great speed and physical attack when evolved into Scolipede. His poison typing will also serve useful against the newly introduced fairy types of this region, so I lock him in as my official 5th generation Pokemon, name him Herbert, and continue up to the palace. I strolled my way into the palace, but not before they overcharged me way crazier than the museum in Slateport City from my last video. And if you haven't seen that one, you might want to check it out after this video. But getting back on topic, we were on a mission to find the Pokeflute, to wake up Snorlax. But instead, we end up retrieving someone's dog, who just happens to belong to royalty. They thank me with a fireworks show, and of course, side girl Shauna's trying to get some. And lastly, they hand us over the Pokeflute for rescuing their Furfrou from the harmless garden. I then trek back to Route 7, awaken the sleeping Snorlax, and give him a good beating for wasting my time. Later, traveling through Route 8, my friends decide it's time to challenge me, but they're still fairly easy to beat at this point, and Venipede is starting to look pretty decent in these battles with a diverse move pool. After descending the big cliff in Route 8, I make it to Ambret Town. And yes, there's still no gym. From there, I still have to do some Rhyhorn riding to the Fossil Dig site, where I'd encounter Team Flare for I believe the first time. They're kind of like a watered down Team Magma. I give them a good spanking, collect some fossils, and head my way to Silage City. Now before I got to the second gym, two great things happened. First, my Ralts evolved into Kirlia, making it only slightly less shitty, and secondly, Venipede evolved into Whirlipede, making him a whole lot better. Now going into the gym with just 3 Pokemon, 2 of which are extremely weak against rock, and one who's absolutely useless stat-wise, I knew to expect some problems. I needed to battle all of these trainers so I could get the most levels possible, and I will say, without an EXP share, getting levels is a whole lot harder, and these trainers were definitely beating my ass. After some wins and admittedly a few losses, I made it to the gym leader, Grant. We kicked off our battle going Amora vs Kirlia, but I switched into Fletchender for the type advantage. He gets hit by a high damage takedown, but leaves Amora with a burn. On the next turn, I managed to get off an Ember, but he paralyzes us, then kills us off with a Rock Tomb soon after. Already a bad start. I send in Whirlipede to finish the job with Rock Smash, but I find out the hard way that I'm no match for Tyrant, as he KOs me with just 2 Rock Tombs, while barely taking any damage. And then he finishes Kirlia off with a single bite to end the fight. Damn. And yes, I tried multiple attempts to beat him, but Tyrant was really messing me up. Hell, his Amora was a damn problem too. But finally, I got lucky. This time I started off the battle with Whirlipede, using an X defense followed by an X attack. Yes, performance enhancers. Although I was paralyzed and sustained some damage, one Rock Smash brought Amora to critical condition. And although Grant used a Super Potion to heal, the second Rock Smash finished her off for good. He then sends out his little devil Tyrant and I heal with a Super Potion, and my boosted defense lets me tank a stomp like it was nothing. But I knew I wasn't going to win the game off trading hits, since my paralysis would ruin everything. So I had a different strategy. Keep healing and let Tyrant hit me until my Poison Point ability poisoned him. And it worked. From there, I used Venoshock, which is doubled in power, bringing him to red health, and then the poison took care of the rest, defeating his Tyrant and giving us the dub. I then claimed my second gym badge, the Cliff Badge. And you don't know how happy I was to win this fight, because before this I was genuinely thinking it was impossible to win with this team. I honestly almost gave up, but I'm happy I didn't. From there I carried on to Geosense Town, where I had another brief ominous encounter with Team Flare, and then headed east towards the exit. But before I got to leave, Karina challenged me to a showdown with her 2 Lucarios, and one of which may join us in the future. I let Whirlipede handle the first Lucario, using Rock Smash to bring him down, and then sent in Fletchender to battle the second one, knocking him out with Ember. After the fight, I made my way through Reflection Cave, which is a lot harder to get through while being underleveled. On top of that, I needed to train Kirlia for the upcoming gym, so I fought every trainer possible, getting some good levels, and I made it to the end of the cave in one piece. Once I arrived in Santaloon City, I took a good look at my Pokemon, and they were doing pretty decent. Now before challenging the gym, I decided it would be a good idea to get my 4th Pokemon out the way. And coming all the way from the Johto region, in the right corner, we have Mareep. I slaughtered all of her friends ruthlessly with Herbert, and left one standing, which I caught. Now Mareep will obviously serve as my Gen 2 Pokemon on the team, and my main electric type user, She's also capable of Mega Evolving, which will come in handy later in the game. I named her Jupiter and did a little bit of training to catch her up to speed. And while training, we had some evolutions. First, Whirlipede finally evolved into Scolipede, and then Mareep into Flaffy, making my team a whole lot stronger. Now back to Sandaloon City, there's a gym, so you'd think I get to challenge it, right? Wrong. I have to go through some more side questing, discovering the mysteries of Mega Evolution, wiping out Serena's whole team, and then I can challenge the third gym. So I entered the third gym and had Curlia on my front lines. He was putting in some solid work despite having such terrible stats, and by the last trainer battle, he evolved into Gardevoir. And as you can see, I opted not to choose Glade, although it may have been perfect to be honest. I then took on Karina, the fighting type gym leader. She started the battle with Mienfoo and I sent out Gardevoir. Just one confusion brought her to critical condition, leading her to Hyper Potion on the next turn, which I followed up with 2 more confusions that would take her out. Her next Pokemon was a Machoke, who would meet a similar fate. We trade hits with Confusion and Rock Tomb, which admittedly did a bit of damage, but we still pulled through, taking down her Machoke. She then sends in her final Pokemon, Hawlucha. So I switch into Flaffy. She tanks a Flying Press from Hawlucha and paralyzes it with a static ability, just as planned. I then switch into Fletchinder to deal damage with Peck while she's paralyzed, and just 3 Pecks later, she was defeated too. This granted me my third gym badge, the Rumble badge, and it was a great feeling, watching what was once a puny Ralts grow into a valuable, strong member of my team. Gardevoir was really proving to be something great. After defeating the third gym, I had to fight Karina once more on the top of the tower. Here we go Lucario versus Lucario, and I somehow lost? I didn't even know that was possible to lose since I had the speed advantage, but oh well. She still gives me her Lucario, and while it would be a great gift for the run, I decide to throw him in the PC as well, because I still have big plans for my 4th gen Pokemon on my team. Speaking of, it was time to receive my 5th member of the run, the cancel member, Lapras, and he's so simple to get. You just walk over to this guy here, entertain a little conversation, and bam! A free Lapras, level 30, so I take it and name him the Loch Ness Monster, or just Loch Ness for short. I then surfed across Route 12 on Lapras and made it to a ranch with a bunch of Skittle, so I hopped on one and freed the Skittle from the gates of its imprisonment. You're welcome. Next I arrived in Coumarine City where I met up with the professor and Diantha. They gifted me the HM Fly before I took the train further into the city. And before I got the chance to take on the 4th gym, Serena challenged me at the entrance. And at this point, her team is still relatively easy to beat. I took down her Meowstic with Whirlipede using Bug Bite, then murdered her Absol with Venoshock. And lastly, I let Jupiter get in on the action to paralyze her Frogadier, which I finished off with Gardevoir's Magical Leaf soon after. I then marched my way into the 4th gym and took on all the trainers. During these battles, I was really just trying to get experience for Flaffy, since she was the most underleveled on my team. I made it to the 4th gym leader Ramos, at the top of his tower, and kicked off our battle going Jump Left versus Jupiter. My first tactic was to paralyze his Pokemon, then switch into Fletchinder to deal some damage with Peck, but his Jump Left did quite a bit of damage himself. Luckily, the paralysis allowed me to heal with Roost and deal a finishing blow with another Peck, without getting hit in return. His next Pokemon was Go-Go, and I decided to keep in Fletchinder. I expected him to do well in this matchup, considering I had a double type advantage, but I was wrong. In just 2 turns, I'm taken down literally, only leaving Go-Go at half health. So I sent out my trusty Scolipede, Herbert, and used Venoshock to bring him to red. Luckily, Go-Go's Bulldoze didn't do much damage, giving me some hope. Ramos used a Hyper Potion, but it didn't matter as Venoshock followed by a Bug Bite brought him back to critical condition. He used a Hyper Potion again, but just 2 Bug Bites later, he was taken out, leaving me with just 10 HP. His final Pokemon was Weepinbell, so I sent in Gardevoir for the Psychic type advantage. Just one confusion brought him to critical condition, and the second one took him out for good, granting me the win. This earned me my 4th gym badge, the Plant badge, and when it came to these major battles, Scolipede and Gardevoir were really stepping up, while it's kind of feeling like Fletchinder is falling behind. After beating the 4th gym, I made my way down Route 13, the Badlands, and hunted my final team member, Gible. Gible would serve as my official Gen 4 Pokemon and is also my final catch of the run. I initially debated whether I chose Gallade and Flagon as my Gen 3 and Gen 4, but as you can see, I ultimately decided on Gardevoir and Garchomp. My thought process was that Garchomp would contribute a lot more in late game battles than any of the others, which is why I picked him over Flagon despite Gallade being better. So I caught him, named him Gibby, and continued. Through the Badlands, I made my way into the power plant to fight off Team Flare that had caused the citywide blackout in Lumio City. I fought off a whole bunch of their grunts, murdering my way to their leaders. Thankfully so, a whopping 3 of my Pokemon evolved in the midst of these battles: Gible, Flaffy, and Fletchinder. It was great to finally have some evolved Pokemon, especially Ampharos and Talonflame, who'd prove to be solid contributors to the team. I was still waiting on Gibby to get that Garchomp evolution though. After the team upgrades, I took on the Team Flare admins, who stood no chance. Gibby took down the first admin's Houndoom with a Sandtomb, then he took down the second admin's Mightyena with a Dragon Claw, sweeping them with ease. Defeating them freed the power plant from Team Flare's control, allowing the city workers to get Lumiose back up and running. So I headed my way back into Lumiose and decided it was time to challenge the 5th gym since its tower was working again. But before I could take on the gym leader, Clement, I had to play a game of Jeopardy with his little sister, and if I'm being honest, I failed on quite a few of these questions. But I did eventually make it to Clement, the leader, and took him on in battle. We started off going Emolga versus Gabite, and we attack each other back and forth with Aerial Ace and Dragon Claw until he's brought to low health. This prompts him to use a Hyper Potion, but I stick to spamming Dragon Claw, getting a lucky critical hit and taking him down on the next turn. Unfortunately, Gibby was left in critical condition and paralyzed, so I sent in Talonflame to face his Magneton. I of course went to use Ember, which did little damage, but got one shot by a Thunderbolt. He's failed me again. So my next option was to use Gardevoir and heal Gabite to full strength. From there I switched him back into battle and took his Magneton down with a single Sandtomb. His third Pokemon was Heliolisk, who'd meet the same fate, going down to just 2 Sandtombs later, granting me an easy win against Clement. And although Gabite's the newest Pokemon on my team, he's already putting in lots of work, definitely Rookie of the Year status. I claimed my 5th gym badge, the Voltage badge, and continued along my journey through Lumiose. After my win, I wound up meeting the professor and Lysander at his cafe, and he was back on his ominous shit again. I then headed north through Route 14, where I encountered Serena for another rival battle. How many times do I have to fight her, bro? It's getting out of hand. Again, I slap up her Meowstic with Herbert's Bug Bite, then I power punch the shit out of her Absol with Jupiter, and finally Thunderbolt her Greninja to death shortly after. I later arrived in Laver City, which in general looks like an off-theme spooky village. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But you'll notice that at this point of the run, I decided to change the layout to organize my team in order of what generation they're from. Also did a little team stat check just to make sure things were looking good. And at this point, I could confidently say that Talonflame was falling behind. Not in levels, but strength-wise in general. It hurt just a little since he was my very first Pokemon of the run, but eventually he'd need to catch up. I then immediately go and take on the 6th gym, and as per usual, we start off fighting the gym trainers, which are getting a little harder to beat because of the clear level gap. Not having an EXP share completely unbalances the leveling in this game, which is kind of odd. It's like you're either completely over level or under level, no in between. I then get to take on the 6th gym leader, Valerie, the fairy type user. She starts the battle with her Mawile, and I mistakenly send out Venipede and use Rock Smash, which does barely any damage. She retaliates with Crunch, and I realize Talonflame would be much better for this job, so I send him out and use Ember, and in just 2 turns she was knocked out. Her second Pokemon was Mr. Mime. I use Ember again on the first turn, causing a burn, but unfortunately her psychic attack takes me down past half health. I then use Fly to stall a turn, letting the burn do some damage, hoping I'd take her out when it hits, but I only got her down to 1/3 of health, and she finishes me off with another psychic. The next Pokemon I send out is Ampharos, and of course she uses a Hyper Potion. From there I use Thunderbolt twice while sustaining some damage from a psychic attack, bringing her down to low health, but of course she Hyper Potions again. I tried to spam Thunderbolt some more, but she uses a Light Screen, which significantly lowers my damage, and then finishes us off with another psychic. Damn. I send in Gardevoir next, not to do any damage, but to heal my Scolipede just a little for the next round. Mr. Mime eventually succumbs to the burns, but nearly takes Gardevoir down with her. Lastly, she sends out Sylveon and I retaliate with Herbert. I immediately use Toxic to poison her and follow it up with 2 super boosted Venishocks, which take her down in a few turns. Simple and easy, giving me the win. I then claim my 6th gym badge, the Fairy Badge. After defeating the gym, I find out there's a problem at the nearby Pokeball factory, which I have to free from Team Flare once again. I relied heavily on Lapras in these battles, trying to bring up his level a bit, and he held his own. I slapped up Team Flare once again and freed the Pokeball factory. These guys are some real menaces because everywhere I've gone so far, they've been putting in work to cause problems. Before I left Laver City, I decided to get a little makeover, changing the fit because the basic clothes weren't hitting no more. I then traveled through Route 15 and made my way to the Frost Cavern. Along this journey, I did quite a bit of battling, trying to level up the most I can before the next gym. And again, Team Flare was there to cause a scene. After solving that issue, I traveled on the back of Mamoswine through Route 17, and made it to Anastar City. This is where I'd get to take on the 7th gym. But right before I could enter, Serena popped up out of nowhere and wanted to fight again. And it's pretty much routine at this point. Her Meowstic dies to a fly attack from Talonflame, her Greninja gets eviscerated by a Thunderbolt from Ampharos, her Flareon's new, I'll give her that, but gets drowned by a Surf from Lapras, and lastly, her Absol gets steamrolled to death by Scolipede. Easy wins. Finally, I entered the gym and took on all of the gym trainers. Now, giving my personal critique here, I'd say this is one of the best gym themes made in Pokemon. The Galaxy designs with layered floor puzzles, definitely a great idea. Whichever developer made this deserves their flowers for sure. Now onto the gym leader, Olympia. We start our battle going Ampharos versus Sigilyph. We end up trading hits with Psychic and Thunderbolt, and in 2 turns I take her down, leaving me at pretty low health though. Her next Pokemon was Slowking, so I decided to heal up and take it on, but her Psychic attack hits hard and I'm only able to get off 1 Thunderbolt before getting demolished by another Psychic attack. So I send in Gardevoir next to do some damage with Magical Leaf, eventually bringing her to red health. But of course, she Hyper Potions, so I decide to spam Magical Leaf until I'm put to sleep by a yawn, which then I use a full heal to recover from, and Magical Leaf some more. Once I got the Slowking to low health, she healed again, and I'm only able to get off 1 more Magical Leaf before I'm knocked out by a Power Gem. The next Pokemon I sent out was Scolipede, using Toxic to poison her badly, but of course dying immediately to a Psychic. I sent out my Talonflame and used Fly to stall a bit, but he also gets instant KO'd by a Power Gem. And at last, I send in Lapras for what may be his first gym battle, and use it as an opportunity to stall and heal Scolipede while Slowking slowly dies of poison. She sends out her final Pokemon, Meowstic, and my final tactic of the battle was to use Perish Song, ensuring I'd be victorious as long as I could survive the next 3 turns. In 2 turns, she manages to take down my Lapras, leaving me to send out Scolipede as a sacrifice to her Psychic attack, but it's too late for her. The countdown finishes and her Meowstic is taken down from the Perish Song, giving me the win at my 7th gym badge, the Psychic badge. After defeating the gym, Lysander sends out another ominous message. Something about world's ending? I don't know about that one. So I traveled to Lysander's cafe in Lumiose to see what's really going on, and come to find out, the damn waiters are Team Flare members too. I take him down and get them to snitch about where their hideout is. And of course it's in the building, so I stroll in, but I'm unpleasantly surprised when I run straight into Lysander. He then challenges me to a battle to stop me from spoiling his plan. Now, spoiler alert, this is the first of 3 fights I'll face against Lysander, so I'll keep it brief till the finale. The first Pokemon he used was Mienfoo, who ended up killing himself by missing a high jump kick against my Talonflame. His second Pokemon is Gyarados, who ends up sweeping half of my team by himself, first killing my Ampharos, then Lapras, and then Gardevoir. Holy shit. My next option was to poison him with Herbert and spam Venoshock until he was defeated. His third Pokemon was Pyroar, who nearly one-shot my Gabite, making me re-heal Ampharos. I then send him back in, paralyze him, and spam Power Gems until he's taken to low enough health for Herb to finish the job. His final Pokemon was Murkrow, who I poisoned with Toxic and stalled with Talonflame's Roost, letting him attack me while he died progressively from the poison, which gave me the hard-fought win. After defeating Lysander, I travel through their base, taking on all of Team Flare, and make it to the chamber where Lysander was holding AZ, the tall old man. He then gives me his whole backstory about him and his Floette, something like 3,000 years ago. And as Lysander walks away, AZ demands I get some key back to stop the end of the world, so I continue into the lab where I'm met by one of Team Flare's lead scientists. I battle him, and after winning, he makes me play a game of chance. He tells me if I press the right button, he won't arm the weapon. So I took a chance and I got it right. But no, he lied, armed it anyway, and watched as it emerged from the ground in Geosense Town. Truly sinister. Now before I made my way to Geosense Town, you already know I had to get my battle on at the cafe. Wouldn't be me without XP. I also traveled out to Azure Bay and found the Ampharos site, really taking my time to enjoy the pleasures of life before Lysander brings it to an end. So I finally made my way to Geosense Town, and I gazed upon the sheer size of the giant weapon. I then found the Team Flare base in the north corner of the town, and took on Lysander once again at the entrance. Now honestly, his team had remained relatively the same since the last battle, with just some evolutions here and there. This time he had a Mian Shao, who insta-killed my Lapras, but was taken down pretty quickly by Talonflame. His second Pokemon was again Gyarados, but I had a trick up my sleeve this time. Mega Ampharos. We Mega Evolved for the first time this playthrough, and absolutely demolished his Gyarados with a single Thunderbolt. His third Pokemon again was Pyroar, going down to Talonflame's Acrobatics attack, and his final Pokemon, Honchkrow, would meet its fate at the hands of Mega Ampharos once again. marking my victory. After taking him down, I continue through the lab to stop the weapon's launch. I fight through countless Team Flare members and finally reach the ancient tree that's supplying the weapon. And suddenly, Xerneas is brought to life out of the tree. Now, I had no idea you were required to catch Xerneas to continue through the game, so I killed him, thinking all was well. But no, I had to catch him. So I used my one and only Master Ball, caught him, put him in my PC, and had my final showdown against Lysander. This time, he's all geared up with some extra tech and levels. And to spare you the repetition of 3 Lysander fights in a row, I'll keep my ting brief. But I defeated Mian Shao just like the last time with Talonflame, killed off Pyroar with Lapras, slapped up Honchkrow with a Mega Ampharos, and finally faces Gyarados. But it's a little different this time. He can also Mega Evolve, and absolutely messes up my Lapras, leading me to switch in Gardevoir, who's immune to his Outrage attack. Mind you, I decided to not use Mega Ampharos for this matchup because he's a Dragon type and will die to a single Outrage. Anyways, I sacrificed Gardevoir in order to heal up Lapras with a Hyper Potion, and after the sacrifice is successful, I switch into Lapras and conduct my cheesy plan of using Parasong, and waited out his death for 3 turns. Of course, he goes on to kill Lapras, but it doesn't matter, as I stall him out using Talonflame and watch him die from the countdown, giving me my final win against Lysander. And after taking down Lysander, the weapon was destroyed. And I mean destroyed in a literal sense, leaving a giant crater in the middle of the town. And then, just like that, we all went back to our regular lives. So back on track to the Pokemon League, I trekked through Route 18 on my way to the next town. During that time, my Gabite evolved after doing some battling, turning into Garchomp. Finally. I then arrived in Kuriway Town and ran into Professor Sycamore, who challenged me to a battle as a thanks for saving the world. Now, it was an easy fight as Talonflame took down his Venusaur with Acrobatics and Mega Ampharos took down his Blastoise with a single Thunderbolt, followed by another one-shot to Charizard with a Thunderbolt as well, getting the easy win. I then move on through Route 19 to the next town, but I'm stopped by my good old friend group, and they all want to battle. So I take them on, one by one, absolutely destroying their teams. No problem at all. I then made it to Snowbell City, which was home to the final gym, but I find out that I had to search for the 8th gym leader in the woods. So I made my way through the winding woods, which was very confusing. I got caught in a few genjutsus, but finally I arrived at the Pokemon safe haven, the Pokemon Village. I find Wulfric, the gym leader, and force him back to his gym so we could battle. So I take on the 8th gym, which has an interesting setup to say the least. The gym trainers were pretty easy to beat once again, but the puzzles were pretty difficult, and I'm clearly not the smartest. I finally challenge Wulfric, the 8th gym leader, to my final gym battle. We start the match, and in the first turn we match up Abomasnow versus Garchomp, which I immediately knew was a bad idea. I get off a crunch that almost does nothing, and in return get popsicled by an Ice Beam. My next choice is Talonflame, who manages to get him to red health with a single Acrobatics, and in retaliation he hits me with an Ice Beam to half health. This prompts Wulfric to Hyper Potion, but having the speed advantage I take him down in 2 more turns with Acrobatics. His second Pokemon was Craganow, who have been a notorious problem for me since my Black 2 video. I keep Talonflame in to do some great damage with Flame Charge, but unfortunately get one shot by an Ice Beam, leading me to send out Jupiter. And of course, I gotta Mega Evolve to show off, taking his Craganow down with a single Thunderbolt. His final Pokemon is Avalugg, who I paralyze with a Thunder Wave, and follow up with a Thunderbolt to bring him past half health. Now he does return fire with an Avalanche that completely one-shots Ampharos. Damn. And for some reason, I decided to send out Scolipede. Why? I don't know. Hitting him with rock smashes that barely do anything. But eventually, I use it as a moment to re-heal my Talonflame as he uses his last Hyper Potion. He later takes me out with an Avalanche, and I send in Gardevoir next. Why? Again, I don't know. One of his Psychic attacks does decent damage though, bringing him to half health before getting one shot again. So I send in Talonflame, thinking this would be my big break. And Flame Charge does absolutely nothing. And when I realized this fight was going on too long, I did something I should have done from the start and sent in Lapras to use Parasong. And in between turns, I hit him with Surf, which did just enough damage to take out the Avalugg before the countdown did, giving me my win and granting me my final gym badge, the Iceberg badge. I then found my way to the entrance of Victory Road, where I was tested by an ace trainer Robbie to see if I'm really cut out for the Pokemon League. And I was, hopefully. I made my way through Victory Road, which was actually a more enjoyable experience than usual. Probably one of the better Victory Roads built in Pokemon. We got some inside parts, some outside parts, not too complicated to get around. 10 out of 10 would recommend. And nearing the end, I faced my rival for the last time, Serena. We started things off going Meowstic versus Gardevoir, and I get faked out in the first turn. Right after, I get absolutely annihilated by 2 Shadow Balls, one of which being a critical hit, while only doing some damage in return with Dazzling Gleam. I then bring Herbie into battle and use Steamroller, which takes her down. The second Pokemon she sends out is Flareon, so I switch into Loch Ness for the type advantage, and trade hits with Lava Plume and Surf, taking her down in the first turn but leaving me with a bad burn. This leads me to face up against her Altaria with Garchomp, and 2 Dragon Claws do the trick, knocking her out, which brings us to her starter Pokemon, Greninja, who trades hits with Dark Pulse versus my Acrobatics attack, bringing us both down to critical condition, but her speed advantage gives her the knockout with Water Shuriken. I send in Garchomp thinking I can get a sneaky finisher in, but of course she takes me down with a single Ice Beam. But no worry, as Scoliped's able to finish the job with a Steamroller. And her final Pokemon, Absol, would meet the same fate. I use 1 Steamroller to bring her down to low health, getting a flinch, and I finish the job with a follow-up, getting the win. And finally, I would no longer be harassed by Serena for the rest of this playthrough. Thank God. I then entered the Pokemon League, and I was very fascinated by its grand 3D design. Game Freak did their thing with this one for sure. Now, I will not lie to you, I immediately went in to challenge the Elite Four, thinking I'd make it work. And I didn't. I lost, and I realized I was severely underleveled, like 15 plus levels underleveled. So I did quite a bit of training, some at the Battle Cafe, some at the Battle Chateau, and of course inside Victory Road. And once I reached a level I was confident I could win, I went right back into the Pokemon League. Now this was the ultimate challenge, the ultimate test. Can my multi-generational team become champions? Hopefully so. All of my Pokemon are looking strong. All of their moves are upgraded to the max and leveled out. It was looking good for us. Now the real question is, which generation of Pokemon is going to show out for us the most? Comment your guesses below on who will be our MVP. So I challenged the Elite Four, starting with the Dragon type user, Drasna. Her first Pokemon is Dragalge, which matches up against Herbert. On the first turn, I use Earthquake while tanking a Dragon Pulse, which does just enough damage to trigger her use of a Hyper Potion on the next turn. So I follow up with 2 more Earthquakes to take her down with my speed advantage. Her next Pokemon was Noivern, so I sent in Loch Ness the Lapras to handle it. And handle it, he did, taking her out with a single Ice Beam. Her third Pokemon was a Druddigon, so I switched Garchomp into battle, and in the first turn I got a good old one-hit KO, taking her down as well. And her final Pokemon was Altaria, so I sent Loch Ness back into battle, but unfortunately got put to sleep by Sing, so I decided to use a full restore to heal. Altaria then tries to do some damage with Dragon Pulse, but it does nothing to us, and I one-shot her with an Ice Beam for the win. The second Elite Four member I challenged was Wickstrom, the Steel type user. We start the battle with Klefki versus my Scolipede, and I already know my strategy. Spam Earthquake. Each Earthquake took him down to red health, prompting him to waste both his Hyper Potions, which then gave me the opportunity to knock him down with a final Earthquake, going unscathed. His second Pokemon was Probopass, who almost gets taken down with a single Earthquake from Garchomp, had his sturdy ability not existed. But no worry, we tank a Flash Cannon and eliminate him as well on the next turn. His third Pokemon is an Aegislash, so I decide to keep Garchomp in to spam Earthquake, which does the job, taking him down while suffering a little damage to his Iron Head attack. His last Pokemon was Scizor, so I decided to use Talonflame, who's been in need of a win for quite some time, and he finally pulls through, one-shotting the Scizor with his newly acquired Flare Blitz attack, securing me a dub. I then moved on to the next Elite Four member, Malva, the Fire type user, and in the first round, she sends out Pyroar to face my Garchomp. She hits first with a Hyper Voice, but of course she ends up getting one-shot by our Earthquake. Her next Pokemon is Talonflame, so I switch in Ampharos for an easy type matchup. And yes, I gotta show off the Mega Evolution. We then tank a Flare Blitz and retaliate with Thunderbolt that wipes her off the face of the earth. Her third Pokemon is Torkoal, so of course I switch into Loch Ness and get straight to spamming Surf. She ends up doing some damage with Stone Edge and then full restores on the next turn, but I stay persistent and spam Surf until she's no longer. Her third Pokemon is Chandelure, so I decide to keep Lapras in for this one, but unfortunately get confused in the first turn, attacking myself. She then follows up with a major flamethrower that puts me in critical condition, but I manage to get off a Parasong, which as we know guarantees my win in 3 turns. So I waited out with Talonflame, using Fly to stall, and watch as the Chandelure literally perishes. Brutal, I know, but a win is a win. And finally, I faced off against the last Elite Four member, that stood between me and the champion, Cyborg, the water type user. We start the battle going Clawitzer versus my Gardevoir, and end up trading hits with Magical Leaf and Water Pulse, which unfortunately takes me out before him. So I send in Talonflame on cleanup, but she heals with a full restore. I get off 2 more acrobatics, bringing him to red health before being taken down by a single Water Pulse. I then send in Herbert on cleanup duty, but he full restores again, which I should have expected honestly. I hit him with a Steamroller, then a Sludge Bomb to bring him below half health, then tank a Water Pulse that evens out our health. Now on the next turn, I use a Sludge Bomb that he barely survives and poisons him, but he hangs on just enough to take us down with another Water Pulse, before dying to the poison. Now that's just spiteful. And I decided now it was time to stop playing around. So I send out the big guns, Jupiter, to face off against his Gyarados. And 1 Thunderbolt is all it takes to take him down. His third Pokemon is Starmie, who ends up surviving a Thunderbolt and hitting me with a surprise Dazzling Gleam. But that ain't shit to Jupiter, and she finishes him off with a follow-up attack, another Thunderbolt. And his final Pokemon is a Barbarical, who meets the same fate as his friends, getting obliterated by a single Thunderbolt, giving me my final Elite Four victory, Fatality, bitch. I then walked my way through the grand door, which led me to my final challenge, the champion. This was the ultimate test. Can a team composed of all 6 generations of Pokemon become champions of the Kalos region? We're about to find out. I met face to face with Diantha and kicked off our battle for the title of the Kalos Pokemon League champion. We start the match going Hawlucha versus Jupiter, and of course, I had to Mega Evolve. Straight away, our Mega Ampharos decimates the Hawlucha with a single Thunderbolt, and that's 1 down. Her second Pokemon is Aurorus, so I decided to send in Herbert and use Earthquake, bringing her down to critical condition. And of course, she full restores, and my follow-up Earthquake does little damage due to Reflect. So I decide to use Toxic, which poisons the Aurorus, and he retaliates with a Blizzard doing massive damage. From there, I use some super cheesy Hyper Potion stalling tactics until his Reflect wore off, and then finished him with an Earthquake. Diantha's third Pokemon was a Tyrantrum, so I stuck Jupiter back into battle and used Dragon Pulse, which is super effective and one-shots on the first turn. So I keep her in to face Gudra and use Dragon Pulse again, taking her past half health, but unfortunately fainting to a Dragon Pulse in return. But no worries, as Gardevoir comes in to save the day and takes her down with a single Dazzling Gleam. Her fifth Pokemon was a Gourgeist, so I send in Talonflame for the type advantage. In the first turn I use Flare Blitz to deal some massive damage, and she tries to use a sneaky Phantom Force, but I counter with Fly on the next turn to avoid her attack and destroy her right after. And then came her last Pokemon, Gardevoir, so I send in Lapras to finish the job. And Diantha apparently had a trick of her own, Mega Evolving, and hitting me with a super strong Thunderbolt. But Loch Ness hangs in there and hits her with a Perish Song, and you already know what that means. Of course, Mega Gardevoir manages to kill Lapras, but I send out a Gardevoir of my own and use Protect to stall. She then hits me with a Shadow Ball, but it's simply not enough, and she's taken down by the Perish Count, marking my win and crowning me the Pokemon League champion. From there, I ascend into the heavens above with Diantha, register my team, and walk out the Hall of Fame as winners. As a whole, this challenge was actually a lot of fun and surprisingly difficult, especially in the early game. That second gym nearly broke me, but thankfully, Herbert the Scolipede brought us a win. But the real MVP, no question, Jupiter the Ampharos. Once she unlocked Mega Evolution, it was over. She carried us through most of the Elite Four like it was nothing. And shout out to Lapras too, that Perish Song definitely came in clutch to seal the deal in major fights, especially against Diantha. The rest of the squad pulled their weight too, even Talonflame managed to step up by the end. It was chaotic, but it worked. Comment down below what team you would have used for this challenge, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that sub button for more runs like this, and check out some of my other videos which are probably somewhere on the screen. Until next time.